Alright, so what I'm going to be tying today is basically a Clouser minnow, but what I've done is I've tied it. I've added in a few different materials, and I've tied it with Flashabou instead of deer hair. And then also I just use bead chain eyes instead of heavier dumbbell eyes. This fly, depending on how you dress it, how full, it can get fairly wind resistant. So I mean, I would start out a little less full. Regardless how full you dress it, this Flashabou really opens up in the water, so you wouldn't need it quite as full as what you might want to do. So this right here is a golden green, and I've tied this one with actually I've used like a Stelon or a nylon coated steel wire, and I've done almost like a loop-to-loop connection on an egg hook, and then I've tied the two tag ends of the wire onto a Waddington shank. I tie some of them this way. I've just been kind of experimenting with it yet. The one I'll be doing today is actually just a Waddington shank, and then I finish it off by doing a split ring on the open end, and then putting a hook onto there. So this is basically what a Waddington shank looks like here to begin with. It's just almost like it basically has two hook eyes. One is in line, and then the other one is either an up or a down eye, whichever way you decide to tie it. Then one thing to note, which I'll talk about later, is it has a little gap there by the one inline eye. So here's the pattern that I'll be tying today. Blue and silver. This is my favorite color for this pattern. And then you can see this one's tied with the split ring and the loose hook there. So and then I also use a red tying thread, so I get that red throat. So I'll get to tying it. So basically I'm just going to put the inline hook eye in my vise, and then I'm going to turn it here, and I like this pattern inverted, so I tie it with as an up eye. So I'll just get my thread started, and this is just this is a red flat wax nylon Danville's. So just get your thread on there, put a base of thread, wrap to the back, and then you're going to wrap to that gap. Oh, and by the way, this is a size, it's a 15 millimeter partridge double Waddington shank. I just like to use these. It's pretty easy for when you want to put wire on, and then I also like that option of being able to put on the split rings. So let's see here. Now I'm just gonna wrap back forward, and you don't have to have a rotary vise. Well, you may need a rotary vise for this fly, but basically you want to bring it to the down eye position, because I'm going to tie in my silver first. Silver Flashabou, and what I've done is I've cut off a hunk, and I've doubled it over and cut it, so I end up with a little bit fuller of a piece there. And then you can play around with, like I said, how much you dress this, but basically I'm going to tie this first tail end pointing back, and I'm going to go about 2 inches off the end of the Waddington shank and tie that in. So tie it in just about 3 millimeters back from the hook eye. Catch it in, and then do just a couple wraps. Make sure you got all those Flashabou fibers sitting on top of the hook. Now just hold that clump that you got in your fingers now, and then run it back, making sure that stays on top of that Waddington shank. And just wrap back to that gap that I was talking about earlier. Now advance your thread back up to where you just tied in, and now you're gonna fold these fibers back, and you want these to not quite make it back to the full length of the tail that you just tied in. Anywhere from like an inch to half an inch shorter would be a good length. You can clip it if you need to, but basically I do it this way because then I only have to tie in once. Just kind of saves some time. Alright, so wrap that back to where you've ended all the other wraps. Come back forward, and as long as I have it inverted, I'm going to go ahead and tie on my my bead chain eyes here. This is just a large bead chain eye that I've clipped off. Go ahead and do your figure 8 wraps. You really want this secured on there well. The one nice thing about these Waddington shanks, does a pretty good job of keeping the bead chain eye positioned on their level, just because there's 2 wires next to each other. It keeps it kind of flat, and then it also helps it from, I'm sure if you've tied with bead chain eyes over regular hooks, they have a tendency to want to spin around. These ones you don't really need to put any super glue on or anything when you're using the Waddington shank. So next thing I'll do is I'll just I'm gonna tie on my I have some silver sparkle braid that I've clipped off. I just like this for bodies. It really seems to catch a lot of light, and almost gives the appearance of like scales. That's kind of what I think of when I see this stuff in the water. So just wrap back and wrap forward again here to right behind your bead chain eyes. Now you can go ahead and just wrap that, touching one turn to the next. Make a body here. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll finish off this body by covering it in either like some type of flyhead cement, or what I like to do now is I use a UV resin. You don't have to do that, and I'm not going to, just to save time on this particular fly that I'm tying. But I just feel like when I'm using it for northern, it kind of protects that sparkle braid, because I don't put on any type of ribbing on there. So now I can invert it, or put it back to the right side here. And basically I'm left with I got this kind of red throat here on the bottom area, and now I've got my space to tie on my my wing, I guess if you want to call it, or the top of the fly, which is this blue Flashabou here. So just take about the same amount as you did for the silver. Clip it off. And you can go ahead and fold it over. And then go ahead and clip the ends here. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It's almost better if it's not. It doesn't seem to look too good if you have the ends lined up too perfectly. It just creates a hard line in the water, and I feel like it more tendency to spook the fish. So just lay that on top here. You're gonna from this point you're just gonna stay in front of the bead chain eyes here, and you're gonna wanna do a few. Catch it in right on the top of the hook here, and wrap back tightly towards the bead chain eyes. And you want this tail to, these blue tips to line up with about the far silver ones. You can go a little bit longer if you want. And then just a few wraps on that first layer, and then without tying in again, I just go and I fold it over, and I catch the fibers, the take fibers that were pointing forward. If I can get it here. I crowded the hook just a little bit on this fly. Usually this works pretty well. Alright, got it. Alright, and that's basically my finished fly. I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this one here real quick. Just get in there, and 3 wraps will be sufficient, because I'm going to end up coating this here with some UV resin, which I'll go straight into. Alright, so you can see here I got the red throat, and then I've just secured it on top there. So this is the UV resin that I use here. It's loon. This is the UV knot sense. It seems to be pretty similar to the basically the fly head cement, the UV that they sell. So I'll start at the throat area here between the bead chain eyes. I'll just put a good dab on there, a good bead of it, and then I'm going to end up using my bodkin to kind of work the bead of it around the head of the fly. So there, I've got this bead. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure it's covering the thread wraps, because that's really going to protect those. And then bring it around where you tied it off. Just make sure you get a good coating on the thread wraps. And work it around. And I really like this stuff because it really cuts down on the amount of time that you gotta wait for epoxies or fly head cements, those kind of things to dry. So now what I do is I just take my little UV light here, kind of gives off a purple light, and I'll go ahead and set that. It doesn't take very long at all. I usually like to give it about 15-20 seconds, pointing it at one area, and I'll move on to the next and just kind of work my way around and set it all. You'll know when it's done, because it'll always have a slightly tacky feel, this stuff, but it'll be nice and hard. And I just use the back of my nail to go ahead and test that. So now I'll just do the top here. Set that in. And then I like to do one more step, because as I mentioned, it kind of has a tacky feel to it when you get done with it. Is I like to take like a nice thin head cement, which actually what I use is you can get an actual head cement, but I use clear nail polish. Alright, so I just test that with my nail. Yep, it's good and hard. And then I'll take this. This is actually just Sally Hansen. I just looked for a cheap and thin one there in the nail polish aisle. So I'll go ahead and take, and you don't need too much. Just a nice light coating. You don't wanna build it up too much. So I'll just take and touch that right there, and then get this bottom. And what that does is prevents the tackiness from catching any of your Flashabou fibers and kind of hanging on to them. Kind of keeps them away from there. So, and that's basically it. Just wait a couple minutes for that nail polish, in my case, to dry. It dries really quick, and that's basically the fly right there. So you got your nice red throat, nice silvery body. Just this blue and silver seems to be pretty much a good all-around color for basically anything. And then just in case you're not familiar, here I'll just hook this on my. That's a split ring, if you didn't know, and basically it's like what you'd put your keys on, just a really small version of like a keychain. And then you can get some crazy looking pliers. These are actually split ring pliers that you can use to open that up and make it easier to thread on. And then I use either this Gamakatsu hook right here, just a nice straight eye, in either a size 4 or a size 6, depending on how big I tie the fly. So that's it, and hope you guys enjoy this pattern. It's caught me a lot of northern, a lot of bass, so enjoy.